It is an absolute gorgeous day here in Northeast Ohio. Early part of June. First real warm day, 84 degrees. And I thought it'd be a great time just to get out the bike and go for a ride and talk about kind of my experience with the bike so far. Now I know you can see I only have 1,900 miles and this is a 2,000 mile review. So not exactly accurate, but also pretty dang close. I will say it is not clickbait in the thumbnail that you just saw. There is one thing about this bike that is like almost a deal breaker for me that I absolutely hate, but we'll talk about that at the end. First, I want to go over kind of my experience with the bike and you know, the things I actually love about this bike, because spoiler alert, I still am absolutely in love with this bike. Even like from the moment I walk out of into my garage, out of my house and into my garage, it's like I see this thing and I'm still like, yeah man, that is a good looking motorcycle. And that's what really begins the style of the bike. I mean, there's really, I guess there is a class of these, I don't know what they call them, like modern retro bikes or whatever they call them. And to me, this is the best one out there. I mean, Royal Enfield has a couple cool ones, and now all the Japanese manufacturers make like a similar style, but to me the Moto Guzzi is like cream of the crop. It looks so dang cool, and for me that's huge. I mean, feeling cool on your motorcycle is part of owning a motorcycle. I mean, you don't want to feel like a loser on a motorcycle. Who'd want to do that? And on this thing, man, you definitely feel cool, or at least I do. The other thing I really love about the Moto Guzzi is they're so kind of rare around these parts. I've only seen one other one, and it was the V7 Carbon. That's a couple model years older than this. I saw it like last summer, and it's the only really ever time I've seen a Moto Guzzi. It drove past my house randomly. So that's like another big thing for me, is I don't like to have stuff everyone else has. I don't particularly love the Japanese style like because of that, or the Harley Davidsons or any of that stuff. Now, I've said it a million times, I love all motorcycles, all shapes, all sizes, but for my personal bike, my daily ride, I want to be a little bit different, and that's, I mean, what the Moto Guzzi gives you. So the styling is awesome. It's pretty rare. No one has these bikes, especially this particular one I have. This is a 2022, and it has the 100th anniversary paint scheme, which the 100th anniversary model was 2021. So I'm not exactly sure how I got a 22 with this paint scheme, because they don't technically advertise that they made them in this scheme for the 2022 model year. I thought it was kind of rare, so I, you know, hopped on the old Google and searched it up, and Moto Guzzi doesn't even acknowledge that this was an option for the 2022 bike. So it could be, there could be 100,000 of these like this, or it could be one of them, and I just happen to have it. I don't know. I've talked to some people that said they've seen them out there, so I'm sure there's, you know, a couple thousand of them out there, whatever. Not a big deal, but it is kind of cool to have this particular paint scheme in this model year, and Moto Guzzi doesn't even recognize it as an option. So that's kind of unique, and I kind of really like that about this particular bike. Still early in the season, and there's a lot of loose gravel in these turns. Not that one particularly. I hope you can't hear that slapping noise. The collar to my jacket keeps beating the heck out of my helmet. It sounds like someone's hitting a drum right next to me. God, that'll be annoying if you have to listen to that the whole time, because it's pretty annoying being inside this helmet and having to listen to it. This could be a bad situation. American flag covering up the dump truck view. Yeah, like there. And loose gravel is the one thing that scares me more than anything. So easy to low side. Okay, so this brings us to the actual riding performance and, you know, what it's like to actually be on this motorcycle for 2,000 miles. And, you know, in general, as a daily rider, putzing around town on roads like this, where you know, go from between 45 miles an hour to 55 miles an hour, 60, you know, these kind of things. These sleepy little windy roads, that's what this bike is made for. It's absolutely a dream to ride this bike on these types of roads. And luckily, where I live in Ohio, there's quite a few roads like this, and it's really just super enjoyable and really fun to ride this bike. Now, it is not a sports bike, so you're not going to be carving up the canyons, as they say, and it's not super high performance. You're not going to lean real low. I mean, maybe you can, but I'm not that skilled of a rider to do that or try that or even really desire to do that. But for daily riding, just cruising around town in these little kind of rural areas in Ohio, man, this bike, it's what it's made for. It's just a dream. And that's really what I do most of my riding. Well, I mean, 98% of my riding. Very rarely am I on the highway unless I have to, you know, get somewhere quickly and back roads aren't efficient. And I will say this bike is not typically thought of as a highway ride. I mean, I have had on the highway before. I've gone from Columbus to Cleveland on the highway. It was fine. I did 85, you know, the whole way, 80, 85 the whole way. Stayed with traffic fine. No windscreen, so it is constant battle. Big trucks push you around. The bike isn't very heavy, but it can be done. I would not want to do a day trip on the highway, certainly not. But, you know, it can be done. But the sweet spot of this bike are these kind of roads right here. Kind of in the middle of nowhere. You can kind of get lost back here and just enjoy the motorcycle for what it is. It's just a beautiful experience. Very rider-esque. Like, there's no rider modes. There's no, like, all these gizmos and gadgets. You have to know, well, you have to enjoy riding a motorcycle for the act of riding a motorcycle, and you'll just be super happy with this. You'll fall in love with riding this thing, just like I did. And honestly, before this bike, I hadn't really owned a bike for more than a year because I just get bored with them or I want something new. I started to have that vibe with this one in the winter, and I thought about selling it, but I ended up not selling it, and I'm so happy I didn't, because now here we are in the early summer, and I'm just enjoying it and falling in love with it all over again. Now, with that said, I did take it out in the winter. Here in Ohio, it gets pretty darn cold in December, January, February, but I was able to at least get the bike out once a month, even to go around the neighborhood, just to keep the battery fresh, the fluids moving, that kind of thing. So even in, you know, the 20s and 30s, if there was no snow on the ground, or on the roads, I should say, because there's plenty of time there's snow on the ground, but if the roads are dry, I'll take it out, you know, for a 15-minute ride, zip around the neighborhood, and you know, and it's just as fun in the winter. I actually have a video on here where I tested some heated gloves and socks and went for a ride when it was like, I don't know, in the 30s or something, when last winter. Kind of a cool video. You can check it out. I have a whole moto vlog playlist on my on the channel. But yeah, man, this is just so peaceful out here, and at this like kind of speed, you know, increasing, decreasing speed and RPMs, it's just really enjoyable. You don't really get fatigued. You don't really get bored. You know, I could literally ride like this all day long, and you know, I actually have. I've taken several trips from northern Ohio all the way down to the southmost point of Ohio, all back roads like this. It's a 4 or 5 hour ride, got down there, turned around and came right back, just for fun. Not on this bike, but on my Royal Enfield. But the point is, you know, this is my style of riding. But the one thing I absolutely hate about this motorcycle, and is almost a deal breaker, is at a certain mile per hour, at a certain RPM, you can't ride more than an hour without getting extremely tingly, like buzzing in the bars and your butt and your feet. I don't know, it's right around maybe 60 miles an hour, maybe like 4,000 RPM, just like a solid cruising speed. At about an hour or an hour and a half, this thing buzzes so bad that my hands go numb. Now luckily I can only ride for about an hour and a half without running out of gas, so it's okay, but it's hard to get right back on the bike without taking a little break to get that feeling back in your hands and feet. And it's just super annoying, because one of the reasons I got this bike was to do like these longer road trips and kind of just cruise around the country on roads like this. As I said, roads like this though are okay if you're constantly changing your speed and miles, you know, your speed and your RPM, because it doesn't set into that weird vibration. But I took a trip from the Cleveland area all the way out to Bowling Green University, which is a few hours away, and it was a road, it's like a 4-lane road, wasn't a highway. Like, this is the perfect example of that. 4 lanes, drive for miles with no interruption. But I was just stuck for like an hour at like 60 miles an hour at like 4,000 RPM. And man, within that hour, my hands were completely numb. And I think that's like, when I go on this cross-country trip that I've been talking about for many years, I feel like it's going to be a lot of that, and that is just not acceptable. I just can't do that on this bike. So I'm going to have to figure something out, like a different route where I can alter my speed and alter the RPM a little bit, because stuck at that speed and that RPM is just a no-go for this guy. So in summation, at 2,000 miles, well, roughly 2,000 miles, well, just under 2,000 miles, I am absolutely 100% still in absolute love with this motorcycle. It looks cool, it's super rare, it's perfect for the kind of riding I do, just kind of cruising around these country roads. And, you know, I would recommend this bike to anyone that enjoys that same kind of thing. It's not great on the highway, although it can be done. Maybe at a windscreen, you'll be much more comfortable. It's not excessively powerful, so, you know, you're not going to blast by anyone on the highway at 100 miles an hour, but it holds up with traffic just fine. The one drawback, and maybe it's just for this particular bike or the way I ride, long, steady rides of an hour plus at a specific mile per hour and a specific RPM is just not doable. It's not comfortable, at least for me. My hands, my feet, my buttocks all went numb within an hour, hour and a half. And it just is very unpleasant. But if I limit that, I think this is probably the perfect bike for me. And that's saying something, since, as I said, I go through bikes pretty quickly. So anyway, that is my review of the 2022 Moto Guzzi V7 Stone. I really appreciate you guys hanging in and watching and listening and hopefully learning something. If you like, subscribe, leave a comment below. I know I get a lot of guys from, you know, I'm in Ohio in the United States of America, and I get a lot of guys from like all over the world. And I recognize that this bike probably isn't rare in other parts of the world, but where I'm at in Ohio, you rarely see them. So anyway, leave a comment below where you're at, where you're riding at, because I'm always fascinated to learn where you guys are from. Let me concentrate here. And until next time, my friends, as always, peace and love.